Very kind and lovely of him to do. And he said, "Gosh," he said, "Robin, do you mind if I shoot our conversation? You know, we're just kind of hanging, us girls." And I said, "Not at all." So he had a camera running, and I mentioned that because I think it paid off later. Then he sent me out of the room. He said, "Would you mind reading some of the dialogue with me?" And I said, "Not at all." And he gave me the words, and he said, "Now listen," he said, "Vulcans have 1,000 years of wisdom behind the eyes, because I want you to think about that." I'm like, "Oh, think about that." So I go out in the waiting room and not just trying to absorb the logic of the lines, because I don't know the story. And Teresa Victor, who got a credit there at the end for being Nimoy's assistant, she was his assistant right there in the space outside of his office. She was really sweet. She's volunteering kind of, Saavik and David and the plot line and all that good stuff. So I go back in, and once again, he puts that on tape. So unlike a typical audition process where you go in, you meet the casting people, you read. Then they invite you to read with somebody else in the room, and you hope you recreate the magic or whatever it was that got you the second audition the second time. And you're not introduced to anybody typically, and then there's a whole lot more people in the room the third time, and the pressure mounts, and you hope again that you woke up on the right side of the bed that day, you had a good hair day, and you were on your verve. But I didn't have to do any of that, because I met with Leonard Nimoy one-on-one, and we did what we did in the room, and he shook my hand at the end of our time together, and he said, "Robin, I have no doubt you could play the part." He said, "Now it's up to the powers that be." And I left there walking on air, honestly, and I didn't go back again until, I went back for casual meetings. I met the gal who does hair, Cynthia Abascal. I met makeup. I met Mr. Costume. I went over there to meet the costume folks, and they prepared me for a screen test, which took place a little later in time. But I never went back, guys, to meet a room full of people who weren't introduced to me. It was always a very gentle, a very unthreatening environment, as was the screen test. I did test opposite two other people, or I was competing that day with two people. But I don't remember who said this to me, but it was implied, wink, wink, that as long as I didn't fall on my face, the part was mine. And the other two people there that day, favors were being honored. I think maybe someone was a friend of Michelle's, and so there was a reason somebody else was there. And so that too was just a very gentle, sweet process. And then I got the call. And I've said often that, people have asked me what's my favorite thing about Star Trek, or what was it like for me on a personal level, and I have to mention that my father was battling cancer at the time, and so this news was just this amazing blessing for my family, because we were gripped with the grief of his serious health issue at the time, and he did live long enough to see the movie, but died in November of 1984 at the age of 54. So having outlived him now 14 years, I know how much he was robbed of this part of his life. But it meant so much that we had Star Trek to distract us and give us joy at a time that was very painful. And Mr. Nimoy knew that, and he was always very sensitive and sweet about what I was dealing with. But yeah, it was a gift of just like a light, and it gave my father a sense of, oh, my daughter in Hollywood, she's going to be okay, which I think every mother and father wish for their children when they go off to be, in a creative field. Please let them land safely, let them make a living, whatever, let them be all right in the world. And that was a gift from Star Trek for sure. Somebody else. Well, it isn't a big thing. I have to tell you, I mean, you met me in the lobby, right? I'm a pretty friendly, outgoing person at times. And I have to say, when I came on the set, I was very serious, like serious as a heart attack. And I didn't speak to anyone until I was spoken to. And it was because I had such massive insecurity about my ability to play the part, to be perfectly frank. I said to Mr. Nimoy the first day, "You seem to think I know what I'm doing, but I really, really don't. And I don't feel like I have the knack for this Vulcan thing. It just did not feel akin to me, and anything in my life experience." And so he said, "Robin, I'll take you every step of the way. I will not," and these were almost his exact words, "I will not take you out on a limb and leave you dangling there." And I said, "All right, deal." So my favorite thing was that he would take me off to the edge of the set. We would literally sit on a step or the edge of the sound stage, and he'd say, "Okay," he'd say, "Let me hear it." And I'd be like, "Okay," and I'd say the lines. And he would literally moderate me as if you were adjusting the volume or the bass or the treble of music. And I would imagine that might be offensive to another artist or actor, but it was not remotely bothersome to me at all. I was grateful for his careful direction and dissection of everything. Like the line "David is dead," for instance. I went to work that day just going, "Oh my God, what is he going to let me do?" Because it just seemed I would have wanted to put a little something in there, sneak a little something emotional in there, and he would have none of it. So he kept his word, and I have such admiration for him, and I miss him, and that is what I like the most, just the way he would deal with me one-on-one. Before the scene at the end, when he walks down, and sort of stops in front of each of us, I remember that day he said to me, we were standing, as I recall, and he stepped into my space, meaning he's now kind of like this, and he's whispering in my ear. And he said, "Robin," he said, "if you were walking, in a New York City street, and you should suddenly see someone you've been intimate with, somebody you loved, and they're walking toward you, how would you feel?" And I'm like, whoa, I was listening to him in my ear, and now I'm sort of gripped with the question, and I want to speak to him. I want to gather my words to sort of collect myself and explain what that would be for me. And I look up at him, and I was, I guess, without words yet, and I looked down, and he said, "That's it. That's what I want." And I said, "Oh, you son of a gun." So he just had a lovely way of sort of tricking you to the whatever the truth of the moment. So there you go.